You know that feeling when you snag a budget gaming laptop for a few $100, only to find the frame heating up like a toaster, the frame wobbling under a simple jump scare, and the game stuttering before you even hit the first level? I've been there, and it's why I always pause before clicking buy now on anything that looks too good to be true. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The Acer Nitro V15 tries to sit right in the middle, not the cheapest chips notebook you regret, but also not the $3,000 beast that burns a hole in your wallet. So does it actually feel like a smarter buy, or is it just another flashy spec sheet? When I first pulled the Nitro V15 out of the box, the first thing I noticed was the Obsidian black finish, a matte surface that doesn't scream gaming but still looks sleek enough for a coffee shop. The laptop weighs about 2.2 kilograms, which is light enough to toss into a backpack for a commute, yet solid enough that it doesn't feel flimsy when you rest your elbows on the palm rest. The backlit keyboard is a nice touch for late-night sessions, especially with the default blue lighting that isn't as garish as some RGB overload models. It's the sort of thing that lets you blend in at the office while still feeling ready to drop into a raid after work. Inside, the Nitro V15 packs an 11th Gen Intel i5-13420H, an 8-core processor that clocks up to 4.6 GHz. In everyday use, browsing, streaming, even juggling a few tabs of Photoshop, the laptop feels snappy. I ran a couple of Windows updates, opened Visual Studio Code, and the system never hit a noticeable hitch. That's a practical win because most gamers aren't just playing games, they're also editing videos, managing spreadsheets, or keeping a Discord server alive between matches. The 8 cores give enough headroom that you can have a game running while you're also recording a clip with OBS without the frame rate dropping into the low 20s. Now for the heart of any gaming machine, the graphics card. Acer slotted an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 5050 into this 15.6-inch chassis. It's not the RTX 4090, but it's a respectable mid-range GPU that handles current titles at 1080p with decent settings. I tested Shadow of the Tomb Raider on medium-high, and the average frame rate hovered around 68 frames per second on the 165Hz panel. That means you can actually use the high refresh rate without feeling throttled. In Fortnite, I could push everything to epic, and the frame rate stayed comfortably above 100 frames per second. The practical strength here is consistency. The RTX 5050 doesn't dip dramatically when you move from a city street to a dense forest. For someone who wants smooth multiplayer without splurging on a desktop rig, it delivers. Storage and memory are often the hidden trade-offs in laptops that try to keep a price tag modest. This model comes with 16 GB of DDR4 RAM and a 512 GB NVMe SSD. 16 GB is enough for modern games that can gobble up 12 GB of RAM when you have mods installed, and the SSD boots Windows in under 10 seconds. The downside is the single 512 GB drive can fill up fast if you're a library collector. Think of Elder Scrolls 6, Cyberpunk 2077 plus DLCs, plus your video projects. You'll likely need an external SSD or a secondary internal drive, which the Nitro V15 can accommodate via an extra M.2 slot, but that's an extra cost and a tiny bit of extra tinkering. If you're comfortable managing your library or using cloud storage for less frequent titles, it's a manageable compromise. The display is where the Nitro V15 tries to stand out from the budget crowd. A 15.6-inch IPS panel at 19201080 with a 165Hz refresh rate and 100% sRGB coverage gives you both smooth motion and decent color fidelity. In bright daylight, the panel's 300 nits brightness is enough to see the HUD without squinting, though you'll still want to raise the backlight a notch if you're on a sunny patio. The real-world test came when I watched a 4K YouTube video on the screen. The laptop upscaled it without any obvious grain, and the color stayed vibrant enough for casual photo editing. The practical weakness, however, is the lack of HDR support. If you're hoping to get the punchy contrast of HDR gaming, you'll be disappointed. The panel handles SDR very well, but it won't give you that extra pop you see on a high-end 4K TV. Connectivity is another area where you can spot hidden value. The Nitro V15 ships with Wi-Fi 6, which I tested by streaming a 1080p game from a router 30 feet away. The connection stayed stable, with virtually no packet loss, even when my neighbor's kids were streaming a movie in the same building. Bluetooth 5.1 handles wireless headsets with low latency, so you won't get that echo you sometimes hear on older Bluetooth versions. Port-wise, you get 2 USB-C, 1 supporting DisplayPort, 3 USB-A, an HDMI 2.1, and a dedicated Ethernet jack. That last one is a hidden gem for competitive gamers who still